Meeting at 6:15, I'll call the Cedar Springs Public School Board meeting to order for the date of June 9th. And if you would please rise for me for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. We have a roll call, please. Secretary Slager.
Yes, trustee Bowser.
Here.
Trustee Patton. Here. Trustee Lund.
Here.
Treasurer Gilmore.
Here.
Secretary Slager. Here. Vice President Schaffner.
Here.
President Reed.
Here. Thank you. We've established a quorum for tonight's meeting. That brings us to the adoption of the agenda, and I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? Vice President Schaffner.
Yes.
Secretary Slager.
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore.
Yes.
Trustee Lund.
Yes.
Trustee Patton.
Yes.
Trustee Bowser.
Yes.
President Reed. Yes. Motion carries. That brings us to gratitudes for this portion of our meeting. I'll open the table, but I'm going to take the liberty of going first. Driving by the high school at nighttime, the landscape and the lighting is really magnificent. You know, where that all is gone and new addition, it just looks very nice. So I'm grateful for that.
I'm just grateful. Obviously, end of the school year came and just lots of end of year festivities and activities for our staff and students and graduation, and so just really appreciated everyone's hard work and just celebrating the year.
I would echo that as well, just, yeah. Thank you to all the staff that put in all the hard work this year. It was a good year, I think. But yeah, takes a lot. Top down. Thank you.
Oh, I will say to our softball team beat Rockford. That was awesome.
That was great.
Good.
It was great.
Very grateful. Thank you. All right.
Can I go?
Oh, you may.
So last Thursday, after the students went home, we had a staff celebration here in the auditorium. And one of the things that I reminded staff was that, you know, summer is an opportunity for you to refresh and replenish your soul and your body. And so we thanked staff by giving them a water bottle. And the idea there was just the simple things, this, you know, the most simple liquid water is so incredibly beneficial to your body. And so we want to give, pass those along to the board members as well. Thank you for your efforts and your energy. It's remarkable between the retirees and all of the service award recipients. We recognized and celebrated over 1,000 years of service to education to Cedar Springs Public Schools, and that's a remarkable number. So thank you for the opportunity to see.
High school representatives, I think it's spring break. I don't see anybody here. Okay, moving on to our consent items, I would entertain a motion for as presented.
Support.
Vice President Schaffner.
Yes.
Secretary Slager.
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore.
Yes.
Trustee Lund.
Yes.
Trustee Patton.
Yes.
Trustee Bowser.
Yes.
President Reed. Yes, motion carries. Brings us to the discussion items for this evening. First up, we have L 4029 property tax with money deduction.
All right, so this is part of the annual process for adopting the L 4029, which is the document that allows schools to levy taxes within the school district boundaries. So So this is part of the truth in taxation process. One of the steps that we have to do for the truth in taxation process is we do have to publish a formal notice in a local paper in circulation, giving notice that we will be holding this hearing tonight. So I placed an ad with MLive, as that is, obviously we don't have we no longer have a local paper here at Cedar Springs. So this is something we do annually. So the truth in taxation deals with the Headley rollback. And what that is it's a law that kind of puts a governor on how much an individual property, how much their property tax payments can increase year over year. So the tax that a property will pay is kind of limited to the lesser of the growth of your property value or inflation. So if there's a calculation that is done, and if the factor is 1.0 or higher, the millage rate will remain the same. If it is less than 1, there's a rollback on the millage rates for the 18 mills and the 6 mills that we levy. This does not impact the 7 mill debt service. The calculation is your prior year taxable value less your current year losses divided by the current year taxable value less your current year additions times the consumer price index. Now, by holding this truth in taxation hearing, it allows us to multiply that factor by the CIP. If we did not do this hearing, it would be this formula right here. Any questions so far? So for our current year rollback, we have $1.93 million less. Skipped ahead. Less 962,000 times the CIP divided by 209 million less 10 million. So we come up with a Headley rollback factor of 0.9956. So as I mentioned, the ratio less than 1.0 indicates annual growth exceeded the taxable revenue, or taxable values have exceeded the rate of inflation. Hence, we are going to roll back our millage rates. And that calculation is simply your current or your prior year millage rates times that 0.9956. So by doing this, by rolling back the millage rate on an annual basis, the district is foregoing an additional almost $150,000 of general fund revenue that we would otherwise be able to collect. Another alternate is we could go to the voters on an annual basis to reset that millage rate back to 18 mills and 6 mills. The district has chosen to do the truth in taxation and roll it back by the factor that as calculated. If we didn't do this hearing, we would be foregoing an additional $111,000 in general fund revenue. So without this hearing, it would be about $260,000 less that the district would have for general operations. We do prepare 2 L4029s, one for Kent County and then one for Newaygo County. So the millage rates are the same for both counties. Our 2025 tax year millage rates with the Headley rollback are calculated at 17.3275, and for the commercial 5.3275. I misspoke. The 17.325 would be the on the non-homestead and non-qualified ag. And all households would pay the 5.3275. That money goes to the state. So tonight we'll be asking the board to take action on the L4029s after we do the budget hearing for the 2025-26 school year. I can tell you the city and township trustees are anxiously awaiting because they need this information to prepare their tax rolls that go out on July 1st. So they have to get those to the printers ASAP. Any questions?
Right into the budget hearing?
And that is on for action.
Yes. We need a vote on that.
All right, rolling right into the 24-25 final budget amendments. Just some quick highlights for their state aid membership. Our audited membership ended up being 2,996 FTEs. So that's what we were received. That's what the state aid per pupil allowance was based off of. Our initial projections at this time last year were 3,003 FTEs. So we're about 7 off. The foundation allowance history, the state ended up maintaining the 23-24 foundation allowance amount and kept it at $9,608 per student per FTE. If you know, there has been a pretty significant jump in the last, I'd say 5 years, going back, more in the early 2010, it was a little bit more of a flat increase. We do anticipate, this trajectory not continuing at quite as steep of a incline, and more leveling out over the next 5 years. So anticipating more like a 2, after this coming fiscal year, it more being a 2%, 2.5% increase versus the 4% 4.5% that we've experienced over the last 3 to 4 years. So what's changed since we did budget amendment 1? As you can see, local revenue has increased a little over $55,000. That was primarily related to an increase in local taxes. I did reduce our anticipated interest income earnings by $25,000, bringing it down to $475,000. We also received $32,000 in universal service funding that's related to different tech initiatives that we receive funds on, and the federal government will pay, depending on the project, up to 70% of the project. For state aid revenue, we had about $380,000 increase net. A lot of different variables go into that. A $52,000 decrease to Section 22L, which is used for offsetting the cost of transportation. Our proposal A foundation allowance decreased by $32,000, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the increase in the local taxes, because the state factors in how much a district is receiving via local taxes. If local taxes revenue increases, the amount of funding you receive through state aid from the state decreases, because they're shooting for total, that state aid per pupil allowance is made up of local taxes, and then the state fills in the difference. A big one relates to section 147G. So that was a $303,000 increase. We knew that money was going to be coming when we did budget amendment 1, but the state had not released our allocation at that time, so we didn't know how much. So I left it off of budget amendment 1 until we knew how much we would be receiving. It should be noted that that's similar to the UAAL funding that we received. That's an in and an out. It relates to, depending on which retirement plan you're in, some of our older staff, more seasoned staff, they are contributing 3% of their salary towards a health care retirement fund. The state decided that they were going to, I'm going to say, reimburse those staff members that 3%. And when I say reimburse, it's not a full reimbursement because it's not a dollar for dollar reimbursement, because if they contributed $100, the state may have only given us $95. And we then take that 95 and pass it on. So in reality, the employee did pay $5. It also should be noted that the districts are required to pay retirement benefits on that $303,000, and that's came at the cost. That was essentially an unfunded mandate by the state. So that was an additional cost to the district. For incoming transfers and other revenue, we increased our GSRP reimbursements from the ISD by $80,000, increase of Medicaid reimbursements by $60,000, almost $200,000 for Act 18 revenue, and based on where food service landed, I did a $100,000 indirect recovery from the food service. So food service will be transferring $100,000 to help offset some of the administrative costs that the general fund incurs when running food service. Any questions so far? For general fund expenses, we had an overall increase of $884,000. These are by the different kind of functions, the basic programming, added needs, all the way down. As a percentage of each type of expenditure by percent, basic programming remains our largest expenditure at about 42.5%. So that's kind of your gen ed education. Special ed would fall under added needs or any at-risk additional work that we do. So those two are really the main, over half of where our operating funds go. So basic programming, we had an increase of almost $314,000. And this is kind of going to be a reoccurring theme. The second one, an increase of $202,000 related to that section 147G. So that's the 3% reimbursement that the district is paying out. Again, you'll see that throughout the presentation. Also budgeted in $73,000 for the retiree sick leave payout. That's part of the CSEA agreement. So that's related to retirees who retired last year. Then we pay it out in January each year. The other big one would be the increased cost for EduStaff subs. Added needs also increased about $310,000. Again, $21,000 for section 147G. We increased our net payment, special ed payments to other districts in the ISD by $45,000. That relates to the Region 1 special ed programming that we do. So we host a number of special ed programming, primarily ASD classrooms, and then neighboring districts host other special ed, MySci, MoSci, and it's kind of grade level dependent. One major driver of this increase was we had one student at Sparta who, in their IEP, it was determined that they needed a one-on-one nurse. So that's something that we will have to reimburse Sparta for. Career Tech and Education, this relates to the FFA grant that we received. That was a $45,000 grant that we received and purchased the Gator and spreader that had the satellite technology that the FFA program is now using. Again, that was that's an in and an out. So we received the funds. I believe we deferred. No, the funds would have hit this year. Compensatory ed. So that's kind of the at-risk portion. We did some additional positions, PBIS and academic interventionists using Section 31A at-risk funds. So that was a net increase of $62,000. Also, you would see an increase of benefits that go along with that. The IXL licensing that the board approved maybe in January. Originally, in budget amendment 1, I had that budgeted as in improvement of instruction, but for this one, I moved it into added needs. So that's really a reclass right there from one function to the added needs function, and you will see an offsetting decrease when we get to improvement of instruction. Any questions so far? All right. Pupil support services. We had a decrease of $156,000. Large part of it was there was a staff member who we ended up reallocating a portion of their salary between pupil support services and the function. So I don't misspeak. Instructional staff services. We did have also a decrease in benefits, partially due to that reclass, as well as changes in benefits. So open enrollment is annually in November, and then changes to benefits occur January 1st. So this is catching up to those open enrollment changes. So it might be, we had a staff member who went from full family to cash in lieu, or they might have had a dependent who aged out and they went from full family to single subscriber or double. So that's would be the driver of those changes in benefits. Instructional staff services increased $94,000, primarily driven by the reallocation from the previous slide. We also picked up professional development wages. So any teacher that, if there's a special professional development that we want them to take, they will be compensated for it. A big one would be EBLI. So once they complete that EBLI training over the course of the year, they receive $1,000 stipend. Also, benefits obviously increase with the increased wages. And there you can see the $111,000 net decrease, primarily related to that IXL being reclassed up into compensatory ed, which is part of added needs. Maintenance and operations, I had a $134,000 increase, slight decrease to wages, salary and wages, increase to purchase services, did a net increase to utilities, materials, and supplies, and then a decrease to capital outlay. Majority of that being related to the security camera project. So this decrease, due to the timing, this is through June 30th, so we won't be billed or have that work completed until by July, August, so it's actually being moved from 24-25 into the 25-26 school year or fiscal year. Back in Amendment 1, I originally wanted to try to fund as much of the capital outlay related to bringing plowing back in-house. I tried to fund that without increasing the maintenance operations budgets, but we just had, with the addition of 2 FTEs there, we just had the capacity to really start knocking out some projects that had been put on the back burner. So that plan did not quite play out as I had hoped, but we did accomplish a lot of good work in the last 6 months or so. Athletics, we had a $75,000 increase, primarily related to wages and benefits. I had to update a few of the steps that the new coaches came in at. Also, we had a few A and B teams at the middle school, so that was if we have a basketball team at the middle school that has, let's say we have 24 student athletes who would like to participate in basketball. Obviously, if you carry one team of 24, there's not going to be a lot of playing time for the majority of those student athletes. So in those instances, we will split the teams, do an A team, a B team. We'll have 12 and 12, and it's a better overall experience for our athletes. But in that case, we would compensate 2 coaches. There was also one coaching position that I missed on the budget amendment 1, so I did add them there as well. Capital outlay, this relates to the high school PA project. This was the initial payment to get them started. They should be starting this week. The balance will be paid out again in 25-26, so likely August of this year, once that project is complete. So you'll see the balance of that project on the 25-26 budget. So at the end of the day, with all those changes, we are projecting an annual surplus of just under $2,000. That does include a $435,000 transfer from the general fund to that newly approved capital improvement fund to fund future capital projects. That leaves us with a healthy fund balance of 30.78%. And then this graph just kind of shows the fund balance over the last about 10 years. And this blue line represents our annual surplus. Any questions on general fund before we move into the non-major funds? All right, community service budget. So this is campus kids, so our before and after school care, as well as tuition-based preschool. So right now I am projecting a net loss of about $117,000. So that's an additional $84,000 of compared to what we initially adopted last year. The primary driver would be preschool tuition, and campus kids tuition is down compared to what we initially budgeted. We tried something new and it did not quite play out as anticipated, providing some wraparound care for the GSRP students. And those GSRP students, we have 7 or 8 classrooms, but that program is run by the ISD. So we did offer some before and after school care for them, but the utilization wasn't quite there. Then we also had some unanticipated unavoidable staffing expenses. We had a few students that were high needs, had some medical issues that we ended up having to staff for. So that was kind of added to the deficit. Any questions on community service? We still will have a healthy fund balance of just under 50%. So projecting fund balance of $345,000. Food service. We originally budgeted to be flat. And the final budget amendment has a deficit of $82,000. But as I mentioned in the general fund, that $82,000 deficit includes a $100,000 indirect recovery, food service transferring money to the general fund. And even with that, our fund balance will remain robust, and we will still have excess fund balance of $74,000, even with that $100,000 transfer. As a reminder, the excess fund balance, the federal government mandates that in a food service program, you only carry 3 months of your annual expenditures in your fund balance. If your fund balance exceeds that amount, you have to come up with a spend down plan. So that is part, and indirect cost recovery is an allowable spend down option. So even with all those adjustments, we will be at $832,000 fund balance, projected fund balance at June 30th. Student activities. You know, this is the kind of where, you know, any extracurricular activity, if they do any fundraising, this is where the money is recorded, and then they use those fundraising dollars on their intended purposes. So it's really driven by fundraising and what those entities or groups are doing. Right now, we're projecting to have $25,000 added to fund balance at the end of the year, bringing our fund balance to $395,000 or 107% fund balance. Now, this is pretty typical for a district our size. And again, it's really, you know, I should remind you the expenditures that are, you know, being made with school activity funds, you know, they do have to still follow district policies regarding purchases and whatnot. So it's not a blank check for our organizations to do whatever they want. There are guardrails, even though they're the ones raising the money. So we currently have 7 debt service funds. This is where revenue is based on the 7 mills that are collected annually. And then the expenses are all based on the debt service schedules that were issued with when we did the debt issuances. And 2 of these funds we will be closing out at the end of the year. So they have a little bit of fund balance remaining. We're transferring those to the other 2 other debt service funds to help them in future years. So here's our final debt service budgets. All sources are based on tax collections, any interest earnings, and then we did borrow from the state via the school bond loan fund. So that comprises all of the revenues for our debt service funds. The expenditures are strictly principal and interest, and as well as each debt service, there's a $500 administrative fee that we pay to, at this point, it's Huntington Bank, and they kind of administer our debt service payments. So there's a $500 admin fee. So principal, interest, and a $500 admin fee for all of those debt services. For capital projects funds, we have 4 funds that currently: sinking fund, capital improvement, and the 2 school building and site bonds. Capital projects, the sinking fund, currently the only revenue that we have recorded or received would be related to interest earnings, because we're no longer levying a sinking fund mill. We actually have not had any expenditures as of today, but I did just put $10,000 in case something did pop up. I'm not anticipating it, but I wanted something in there allocated. This is the new capital improvement fund that was approved back in February. So as you can see, this is the transfer from the general fund for $435,000. And we would have a projected June 30th fund balance of $435,000. For the 2021 bond construction fund, I will be trying to close this one out. We don't have a whole lot left. We earned $76 in interest. We have about $4,000 in the fund remaining, and I will be using that to pay one of the June pay app that we received from Triangle, and that will close out that fund for this fiscal year. So you will not see a 2021 bond construction fund 25-26 budget. And then the last one is the 2023 bond construction fund. So revenues are all interest earnings. They're based off of investment earnings through April, and then projecting May and June. Expenditures are based on actual expenditures incurred through May, plus the projected cash flows for June. And then we open projects we currently have going on, obviously beach, the weight and cheer room addition, the tennis courts, and the parking lot improvements, all which are scheduled to be completed in August of 25. But so we will still have all of those. Those are all still included in the 25-26 budget as well. When all is said and done, we're projecting to end this fiscal year with just over $11 million remaining in our 2023 school building and site bond fund. So we'll be asking the board to take action on the final 24-25 budget at the June 23rd board meeting. There's still some stuff coming in as we close out the year. If there's anything major, I will be updating these numbers, and I'll present that to you on the 23rd. Any questions on the 24-25 final budgets?
No questions. I just really appreciate the detail for the time that things kind of show us. There are things that are going to help us with transparency into the numbers. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for maintaining a healthy fund balance. Greatly appreciate it.
Yes, it is. It's important, and we'll kind of get that a little bit into that now with the 25-26 proposed budgets. All right, so this is kind of some standard wording related to the 17.3275 mills that we will be asking the board to approve. That will be levied on the properties within the Cedar Springs Public Schools School District. Again, those 17 mills would be levied on non-homestead and non-qualified agricultural properties. So non-homestead would be anybody who has a second home or a vacation home within the district. Non-qualified ag would be any commercial or businesses other than farms and farmland. So I know I've mentioned the CREC previously. They did have a CREC in May, and those are the numbers that the state government uses to kind of set the coming budget. Generally, they just have a January and May CREC, but right now, due to some economic uncertainties, they are discussing the possibility of having an August CREC. They did this 5 years ago, I think in 2020 with COVID. So they had the January CREC. The May was right after COVID hit, and then they did an August one to adjust those final numbers. Some key takeaways from the CREC right now. The economic data and consumer sentiment are somewhat misaligned. They talked about uncertainty probably 100 times during this presentation. They discussed tariffs and the economic side of that. So, but under all that, the revenue data is still positive, but as that first bullet point mentions, the sentiment doesn't necessarily follow the data. And right now, they increased the revenue for the school aid fund, but decreased the projected revenue for the general fund, general purpose revenues. So anytime there's general pressure on the general fund, general purpose dollars, that puts pressure on the school aid fund because they might start, kind of moving some cups around and reallocate some money from the school aid fund to fill some gaps in the general fund. So that's something we'll want to keep an eye on. So based on the two full budgets that have been released, the executive budget and the Senate budget, we are projecting a $10,000 per pupil foundation allowance, which would be a $392 per pupil increase. I am projecting state aid membership of 2,942 FTEs. So that would be a 54 FTE decrease from the 2,996 that we had for this fiscal year that's ending June 30th. So here's the two complete budgets that have been released, and the House has released a press conference essentially when they were up at the Mackinac Center. And the House speakers made the statement that their budget would include a $2,392 increase to the foundation allowance, bringing it up to $12,000 per pupil. They did not provide any other detail for the rest of the budget. So I haven't put too much time into that, but some folks at the ISD have looked at it, and based on their calculations right now, without cutting some of these other sections, there doesn't seem to be enough funding available to do the $12,000 per pupil foundation allowance without cutting these other categoricals. So it sounds like we probably won't really know what the House budget is until August or September. So we might be waiting a while before, it might be 2 or 3 months after we pass the budget on the 23rd before we really know what the state aid budget will be. So I have to emphasize, this is our best estimate with the data that we have and the information that we have now.
I had a question, I'm just trying to connect that to this presentation and actually the previous one for the budget, but the increase in the staff services that I think was like 39,000 for at-risk funding. Would that come from the section 31A?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So for our revenue projections, I'm projecting a overall decrease in our revenues of $626,000. Primarily, that's driven by a decrease in state aid revenue. And that is, there's a number of factors to that. There's a decrease to, I mentioned that $303,000 of section 147G at the last presentation. Those funds are going away. On the opposite side, those expenses are going away. So that's a net zero change to the budget. Now we won't have to pay for the associated benefits, so that's a positive. But kind of going top to bottom, local revenue projected to be up $83,000. That is primarily relates to a $200,000 increase to property taxes. That's primarily driven off of existing property tax value. Again, that revenue is limited to the growth of the CIP, but then there's also additional new taxable value that's entering the within the district. We're showing a $75,000 decrease to interest income, projecting some possible interest rate cuts throughout the year, and then a $45,000 decrease to miscellaneous revenues. For state revenues, I have that down $318,000. There are a lot of moving parts to this one. The big one relates to section 147A4 and 147C2. So previously, I mentioned that the state did not increase the per pupil foundation allowance from 23-24 into 24-25. What they did was they gave districts this section 147A4 funding. For us, that was $1.2 million. Well, for 25-26, section 147A4 and 147C2 are going away. So that's $1.7 million going away. I do have a $160,000 increase related to the foundation allowance, an increase to section 31A at risk. Part of that includes deferred revenue from 24-25, deferring it into 25-26. This $1 million relates to all of the other section 147 categoricals. So 147, it has to do with retirement costs. Part of this would be also an in and an out. So each year the state gives us funding for the UAAL portion of the retirement cost expenses. They give us the money and then a few days later we give it back. So any increase to that UAAL portion of the 147 it's a wash, but it shows up as an increase in our revenues and a increase in our expenses. I do have federal revenue being down by a little over $500,000, primarily related to the final ESSER funding that we expended in 24-25. ESSER, there is no ESSER funds or COVID related funds on the 25-26 budget. So we are done with that. So that's the primary driver of this decrease. I have title fundings decreasing by $71,000. So there is a hold harmless clause related to title funding, and it's basically you are guaranteed to receive 85% of your prior year allocation. So that's what I budgeted for. So if we were receiving $100,000 of Title I, I budgeted $85,000 for this coming fiscal year. And then the last large one is There was a health resource advocate grant that we recognized $121,000 in 24-25. That grant was terminated in 24-25 and will not be coming back next year. And then finally, some transfers and others up $122,000, primarily related to the Act 18 and enhancement millage. For our expenses, I have a slight decrease of $257,000. Some key assumptions that are built into the expense side of the budget. We have a CSEA agreement. We are in year 1 of 3. Next year will be year 2 of 3. So we have budgeted step plus 2.5% of base for all of our CSEA members. We will be based on declining enrollment. We do project reducing a few number of sections at the elementary level. Support staff, and I should add, we are doing that through attrition. We're not doing any, we don't have any projected layoffs at this time. So somebody's retiring, resigning, we evaluate the position and whether or not we're replacing it, or do we, shift funding to a different priority. For support staff, we're doing also a step plus 2.5% increase to the hourly rate. And that really is kind of the theme for our non-union admin district office salary and hourly staff. This actually should be 2.5%. Healthcare costs, we've discussed the possibility of a pretty significant increase related to the health bill or House Bill 6058. That could be potentially 10% increase to that hard cap. Right now, it still sounds like that will not be going forward in with the legislators. So I currently have the increase to our health insurance cap going up 2.9%. There was a slight, the retirement rates were decreased, but they did then increase the UAA rate from 10.58% to 15.02. Again, that UAAL is the in and the out. So we'll recognize more revenue related to it, and our corresponding expenses will also increase. So the impact on the bottom line is 0. Some non-personnel expenditures. We did have a reduction in curriculum supplies, tuition payments, and dual enrollment textbooks, and then a reduction in operation capital outlay. Staffing changes. So from an admin district level, we're down 0.15. We have 3 retirements, 1 resignation, eliminating 1 position, we're replacing 2, and then there's 2.85 new positions. You add that all up, it's a reduction of 0.15. I have the CSEA being down by 1 FTE, and support staff being down by 2 FTE. That one is primarily, we had some unfilled facility care positions that I removed after talking to staff. We're currently at a good staffing level, so I removed those from the staffing plan. And again, I'm noting that we have staff being transferred to fill some vacated positions. So sometimes, like this -2, it's really somebody's just shifting to a different position. For basic programming, I have an overall decrease of just shy of $500,000. Again, that we have a step plus 2.5 and the increase to our medical hard cap. That decrease, the primary drivers of that decrease relates to that section 147G. That's $202,000. That's no longer budgeted for, because it's no longer a thing. Also, we had a $266,000 net decrease to capital outlay. So last year we purchased beach furniture, and then we also we do have a slight increase to our tech expenditures. The net impact is a $266,000 decrease. Added needs, so this again is our special education and at-risk additional interventions. We have a $90,000 increase here. $175,000 increase related to salary and wages, $103,000 related to associated benefits. There's a $108,000 decrease in purchase services that relates to the IXL purchase that we made this year. That's a 3-year agreement, so we no longer have the budget for that in this year or the following year. And again, we're not budgeting for a new FFA Gator. For pupil support, so this is our counselors, occupational therapists, psychs, school social workers, and other non-instructional staff. We have a $592,000 increase. This is primarily, we obviously have the increase to our wages for existing staff, the step plus the 2.5, but we are adding 2 new positions, a school social work, elementary level social worker, and an elementary counselor position. So that is a $356,000 add and a associated benefits of $235,000. The school social worker, we are charging to Section 31A, the at-risk funding from that we received from the state, and the counselor will be charged to the Section 31AA state categorical. So that those are the funds that are intended for student and staff mental health and safety initiatives. For instructional staff support, we have a net decrease of $281,000. There was one, I had mentioned earlier, we had a position that was kind of split between 2 categoricals. That position is going away. So that contributes to that net decrease. We have net associated decrease in benefits. And then also I have not budgeted yet for those professional development wages. We are kind of wrapping up a lot of the EBLI. Majority of our staff have now been through EBLI training, so we won't be seeing as many of those $1,000 stipends as they go through those trainings. We will incur some professional development expenditures. I don't have a solid number yet, so I haven't included that. For general administration, school administration, and business services, the general administration is up about $13,000. School admin is down $25,000, and business services is up roughly $20,000. This includes obviously the standard 2.5% plus step and changes to benefits. And we did also eliminate the K-5 Dean of Student position. That was the position held by Clarence McCoy, and he will be coming to the high school to replace Mike Duffy as the high school Dean of Students. So while we're eliminating a position, we're not laying anyone off. Maintenance and operations have a decrease of $146,000. Increase to salary and benefits. This decrease is primarily driven by the decreasing our capital outlay expenditures for 25-26. We did expend quite a bit last year getting ready for the snow removal and transition. We should be in very good shape and do not anticipate needing to have anywhere near this level of expenditures. I'm not saying there won't be any, but it won't be 300,000. Transportation I have going up 88,000. That's primarily related to the Dean transportation contract. That the daily per diem rate and the variable rate increases annually by 2.5%. So factoring in the same number of routes, and then the that per diem increase, we have that equates to about an $80,000 overall increase. Obviously, if enrollment does continue to go down, we might be able to go from 26 routes to 25, at which point would relieve some pressure on our transportation expenditures. Community services, we have an increase of 185,000. That is primarily, that's all related to that new Director of Extended Learning Opportunities position. Outgoing transfers and other, that's a decrease of $435,000. I currently do not have any money budgeted to transfer to that capital improvement fund. And then capital outlay, that's an increase of $131,000. That's that remaining balance of the high school PA and clock system project. And again, that project was funded with will be funded with 31 AA funds. So as a percentage of each type of expenditure, you can still see about 45% of our expenditures relate to salaries. Another 32% are benefits. So, you know, the lion's share of what a school district spends their funds on are the people that make this place go. So you put it all together, we are currently projecting a deficit of $366,595. Bringing our fund balance down to 14.4 million with a projected fund balance percentage of 30.18%. So still a very, very healthy fund balance. Any questions on the general fund before we move on to the others?
Just wondering, so you said there was forecasted a reduction in the dual enrollment tech post. Is that because we anticipate fewer dual enrollment students, or because the format of how they're instructing that requires they're more online, less textbook?
Fewer participating. The numbers at the high school are going down, and then also there's also My School at Kent, so some of the or other virtual options, but it has been going down year over year. All right, community service budget. So a couple highlights for related preschool. So for next school year, we will be offering. So we're no longer offering Force preschool because families can get that for free through GSRP. And there used to be a eligibility criteria. It's now universally free. If there's a seat, and there are, you can get in. It's the same curriculum as what we were offering, and there's no tuition. So we are saying take the no cost option. And last year we had actually shifted our Force staff from Cedar Boys to the ISD. But we will continue to offer threes preschool because GSRP is only for 4-year-olds. So our offerings we'll offer a Monday, Wednesday, Friday AM class, a Tuesday, Thursday AM class, and then Monday through Friday afternoon care. So we do have 6 families who wanted full day preschool Monday through Friday. we did not have the numbers to support running that. So we were able to kind of come up with a plan where we can still provide them. I think a large part of the reason they wanted the full day is they needed coverage for while they were at work. So we're still able to hopefully meet the needs of those families by offering that kind of afternoon care, but it won't be fully structured curriculum. It'll be a little bit different, but it'll be an opportunity for their kids to be with us for the entire day. All salary assumptions are in line with what we previously discussed. For campus kids, we will continue to offer that wraparound care for our GSRP and preschool students. And then one thing we did this year is we did eliminate the full-time director position. With GSRP taking away so much of that shift to GSRP and tuition free, we didn't have the revenues to continue to support a full-time position. So with all that said, I am projecting a $10,000 surplus for the 25-26 school year compared to the $100,000 deficit that I'm projecting for the 24-25 final budget. That would bring our projected fund balance to $356,000 or 58% of our expenditures.
So one of the things that we're looking at for the 26-27 school year, so 2 years out, is actually pulling the GSRP programming in-house. So rather than utilizing ISD support services for that, we would use Dan's expertise and the expertise of our team to actually be able to run that program in-house. We would receive those revenues from the state, just as we would for a K-12 student. And so that will be another way to offset some expenses on the budget that we've not been able to do up until now. So we're really looking 2-3 years out for some revenue opportunities to help us offset some of the costs that we're currently incurring.
Food service, we do anticipate that the state will continue to offer universally free breakfast and lunch for all students. The reimbursement rates have not been released, so we are projecting that they will be maintained at the same level. Currently I have the number of meals being served remaining the same, but with decreasing enrollment, it is a real possibility that the number of meals served will also go down. I do have another $90,000 of indirect recovery moving from food service to general fund. But even with doing that, we will still have some excess fund balance. So I am currently budgeting a $68,000 deficit, but that is intentionally to try to stay ahead of that excess fund balance that we are obligated to spend down. We are starting to somewhat run. You can only buy, replace so many refrigerators and walk-in coolers. So this is one thing that we haven't done in the past. It is completely allowable, but we're trying to get ahead of the excess fund balance. School activity, again, these are the funds generated through building and programming fundraising. Usually anticipate the expenditures are going to be pretty similar to, if you raise the funds, we want you to have an intended purpose to expend them. So they usually should be pretty close. So I'm budgeting for a $25,000 excess. So that would bring our fund balance up to a total of just under $420,000. And again, all expenditures have to be made within the district's purchasing policy. Our debt service funds, we're going from I think 7 or 8 down, or 8 down to 6 for the next fiscal year. So our initial budgets, this budget is put together based on a annual millage recalculation that is prepared for us by Baker Tilly. This is a part of the requirement that the state has for us to participate in the school bond loan fund. We have to submit that to the state by I think August 1st. This budget is put together using that millage reallocation that Baker Tilly, who is a public accounting firm, also does governmental financial advisory. So for our in total, all 6 funds, we have a projected revenue of $658,000 in tax, and we will be projected to borrow $508,000 from the school bond loan fund. And that is what comprises all of the revenues here. Again, the expenditures are straight from our debt service schedule of principal and interest, as well as those $500 administrative fees that we will be paying Huntington. So $3,000 of this total would be those administrative fees. Capital projects. So this one, I kind of like. These 2 slides were on last year's budget presentation, kind of conceptual of what the weight room and the cheer room could look like. And this is what the weight room and the cheer room looked like as of about 2 p.m. on last Friday. So you can kind of see it coming together, the vision coming together. For sinking fund, I currently have budgeted $80,000 of investment interest earnings. Again, we're not collecting any taxes on the sinking fund. I put $10,000 in expenditures. We don't have anything necessarily earmarked for sinking fund yet, but I do anticipate we will run into something throughout the year, and we would address that through budget amendment 1 at that time. And anything that is done with sinking fund will be doing in conjunction with the remaining bond work. Here's the capital improvement fund. As you can see, I currently do not have any money budgeted to be transferred in. And this is again a placeholder in case there is anything that comes up. We do have funds allocated in that fund for expenditures. There's nothing tied to that number yet. And then the final one would be the 2023 school bond, building and site bond. We will not be, I don't think we will not be able to fully close this out next fiscal year. There will still be some remaining kind of cleanup work in the 26-27 school year. I do anticipate probably about $1 million worth of work that will then be paid in July, August, September of 2026. One thing of note we really cannot lose sight of is I have budgeted $845,000 in arbitrage liability that we will have to pay the IRS. So essentially that is the IRS allows governmental entities to earn interest on the bond proceeds, but they say you can earn some, but not too much. And if you earn too much, we want our piece of it because we're issuing tax exempt bonds. So they're not getting their money from the bond people purchasing the bonds. So this is a way to get their piece of the pie. So I am budgeting right now based on estimate $845,000 that we will have to pay to the IRS. Again, if anything changes, I will update the board on June 23rd, and we'll be asking the board to take action on the 23rd to adopt the 25-26 budgets. Any questions?
Probably a little early to ask the question. I don't know if it would be in a sinking fund or if it'd be in a different, where the dollars would come from. But we heard that there may be a capital expense and for retirement or modifications of the building. We had looked at what's the issues. So I guess just the question is, if there's work that needs to be done, whatever work that is, what fund would we see that come out of?
We really could take it out of either the bond fund, capital improvement fund, or the sinking fund,
Or the general fund.
or the general fund.
But we'd rather not,
You know,
if you have to.
yeah, obviously retiring a asset is part of the life cycle of owning that asset. So
It's not in here now.
No, I-
had a recommendation or.
correct, I did not.
But that's where it would live and that's where the change would.
Yes.
Thank you.
General comment, well done, thank you, that's a lot of work. So, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Moving on to the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution.
So Bonnie's portion was the A team, now the B team is coming in to do the rest, but you know, it has been an incredible body of work that Mati and the business team have put into creating this vision, this financial vision for the district for the 25-26 school year. And the casting of the vision is a complex, dynamic process. There's so many moving parts, so many variables at play. But it just takes careful, strategic forecasting to really bring about having the ability to tell a story that's reasonable. And it does put us in a position where we can have a plan moving forward. Now, we're blessed that we have a fund balance that we can utilize in the event that we have a storm that comes through, an unforeseen expenditure or a change that we didn't anticipate. But the work that the business team, Barb and Mati and Carrie Duddles and William Cox have done have been just remarkable. And then working hard with the human services team, really trying to pinpoint that staffing number, working with our building administrators to determine, you know, what positions are essential, what positions can we really look at to maximize that return on investment. How can we maximize our student experiences during a dynamic shifting financial time. So again, it's been fun to watch and greatly appreciate the efforts of those individuals. So thank you so much. The next couple of pieces of items on the agenda are things that we have seen before. So the first item is the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution. And that artifact, you'll note in board book, you'll see that the resolution is the same basic document that you've seen in years past. The numbers are changed, the years changed, but basically what this resolution does that needs to be passed by the Board of Education, it simply says that as a district for athletics, Cedar Springs Public Schools will abide by the policies and requirements of the Michigan High School Athletic Association, and that our teams, our coaches, our athletic program will be in compliance with all of the guidelines and rules associated with Michigan high school athletic contests. And so basically what this resolution is saying is Cedar Springs Public Schools for the 2025-2026 school year wants to participate as an MHSAA sponsored program. So any questions on that? And we do have that on for action tonight, but if there are questions, we could pause and take action on it in 2 weeks. But because it was something that we do on an annual basis, we did put it on for approval tonight. All right, the next item on is the Kent ISD enhancement millage. In board book, you'll find that there are 3 artifacts associated with this agenda item. The first is a presentation that was presented or created by the team at the Kent ISD and also the team from Seaforth Public Relations firm. They're a firm out of Grand Rapids, and they help districts and in communities across the state on campaigns and on public relations work related to bonds and other municipal projects. The baseline, the background on this item is in 2017, the voters in Kent County approved a millage for the Kent ISD to levy across the county and distribute funds collected across the county back out to districts at a per student basis. So the initial levy was passed in 2017. It expires at the end of the 2026 school year. So it expires basically a year from now. But what the Kent ISD is doing, looking to put this item on the ballot in November of 2025. So that way that initiative doesn't expire. Because we do find that oftentimes when school districts go forth to their communities and are requesting a levy of millage, that the likelihood of them failing increases significantly if it's referred to or viewed as a new initiative. If we can renew it ahead of the expiration date, then it would be a renewal, not a new tax. And so what they're asking for is districts to consider this option. If districts are in support of the proposal, then what they would do is, as a board, you would pass a resolution at the June 23rd meeting saying, yes, we support this ballot initiative. You're not saying that we are voting for it. That's not what it's about. But the district, we have to have at least 51% of the students in the county represented. We have to have at least 51% of the students in the county, their boards of education have to approve this ballot proposal before we can put it forward to the voters of the county in November. So the background, the information is included in the presentation materials from the Kent ISD, basically for a resident homeowner in Cedar Springs. If their home market value was $330,000, their taxable value is $165,000. The millage cost for this particular item would be $148.50 annually. And so a monthly cost for that homeowner would be $12.38. A daily cost for that homeowner would be 41 cents. And so that would be the rate. It's a countywide millage. So if voters in the townships, the voting precincts in the Cedar Springs Public Schools community vote it down, if the rest of the county supports it, then it passes from a county-wide perspective. So it's not a vote that's done district by district. It truly is a vote that's done by the county. And then those dollars are reallocated across all districts equitably. One of the differences between the initiative in 2017 and the new initiative that's going to hopefully be put before the voters in November of 2025 is that it would include charter school districts. Charter schools would also be a part of this. They would also reap the benefits of an initiative like this. So like Marty talked about with the Headley rollback that districts face or that taxing bodies face, one of the proposals in the renewal of this ballot initiative would be to restore that Headley rollback. So it would put the renewal would be asking for the restoration of that gap that they've lost since 2017 due to the Headley rollback piece. So that's one piece that we're asking for, that the ballot initiative would ask for. So then for our district, the proposal, we would restore and renew the 0.9 mils that taxpayers approved in 2017 to help fund local public schools. The total benefit to the Cedar Springs Public Schools District would be just over $1 million. So proposal based on our current enrollment would be $581 of additional revenues that we currently get because of this initiative. So if the initiative was to fail in November, not be renewed and expire in 2026, then this would be a deficit. Then we would no longer have this revenue helping to support our program moving forward. So it's something that will be on for action on the 23rd, but just wondering if you had any questions. I included 3 items for you from the ISD. One was a frequently asked questions document that they put together for us. One was just a general overview document, and then of course the slides that they put together. So any questions on that either I can tackle or Mati can tackle? Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is the West Michigan Pool resolution authorizing membership in the pool. So Cedar Springs Public Schools belongs to the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool. It has been a member of the pool since before I arrived. It was one of the early adopters to the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool. The West Michigan Health Insurance Pool came about because several districts in the Kent County area were facing really daunting cost increases by participating in MESA for their employee benefits, their employee health care. And so the idea was, what if we create our own group? What if we create our own pool, call it the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool? It started off just as school districts in Kent County, and basically they partner funded, self-funded themselves to help reduce some of the healthcare costs that they were incurring as districts. Well, the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool has grown since its inception. We're still members, but so are communities across the state. Not only is it school districts, but it's also municipalities now that belong to the pool. And it's just a very cost-effective way for us to help provide health benefits to families and to employees, and doing it in a way that we have some greater control over the costs. It's a great, for me, it's a wonderful alternative. I serve on the board of directors for the pool. I have an opportunity to serve on 2 committees. One is a value add committee, And the other committee is the committee that looks at prescription costs. And we meet monthly and have detailed, engaged conversations with experts from across the country on ways to help keep healthcare costs down. So provides direct benefit to our members. And so it truly is a member-driven organization. It's a unique body. What the resolution that you're being asked to consider is just a resolution for our district to continue to participate in the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool for a period of the next 3 years. So it's just a formality that they ask member districts to go through. So that's all this one is. It's just a resolution saying that we as a public school district want to continue to be a part of the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool moving forward. So any questions on that? Okay.
There's no cost to that. I think he's done that for.
No, there's no cost to participate. Yeah, it's a fascinating body of work. Some parts are, yeah, they really make you think, you know. Do you fund certain prescription medications even though a specific dose is $750,000 for a single dose, and there's no guarantee that that dosage is going to work? You know, so do you, as an agency, do you fund that? Do you include that? Do you cover that? And you have some difficult, I've been in some very difficult conversations over the last 14 months. The easy ones were the weight loss prescription, the Zepbound and the GLP-1 inhibitors. Like while that was a little bit of a controversy, it paled in comparison to some of the genotherapy treatments that are out there. You know, there are some big things on the horizon. The medical, the medical field is amazing in terms of what is coming, but there's also significant expense coming with those treatments that someone has to pay for. So anyway, that's the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool.
Just a question. I know we've been involved in that for a long time, looks like, and I certainly hear the benefit, but if the board has to take action, I'm just curious, if the board doesn't recommend this, what's the alternative?
Well, we'd have to go to Mesa or to Priority Health.
Okay.
And seek out another coverage partner.
Or
Or Aflac. I mean, there are different partners, but we would have to go out there and find another provider for our healthcare.
At let's say the annual cost is $25,000 for a plan. But the cap is that the state has given us, that Public Act 152 cap is $22,000. So we employees have to cover that $3,000 difference. That's our cost share. If you move to a plan that is $30,000 annually, the cap still remains $22,000, and now the employee has to pay $8,000. So I know there were individuals, staff, I think we've discussed it, that cap last year only went up 0.2%. So the hard cap only increased 0.2%. So premiums went up, the hard cap barely went up, and we had to require our employees to cover a larger percentage of their health insurance. Well, I know Mesa, their annual premiums were significantly higher than what West Michigan Health Insurance pools were. And I just personally had friends from high school that are teachers who were on Mesa, and like their premiums were going up $300-400 a paycheck. So there is great value in the pool for the employees of the district for sure.
Yeah. And part of that is that we have an opportunity and we do invest the time in trying to keep those costs down. So one example is a program through the pool called Hinge Health. So I don't know if any of you have heard of it before, but it's basically an online provider of physical therapy. So you can sign up through Hinge Health. It's no cost to the member or to their family members. And you basically get your physical therapy through your phone or through your computer, and there's no cost to that. So rather than going to a service provider locally, you can get your PT anytime, anywhere. And again, that's a no-cost provision, and it's a great way to help keep costs down. That I don't know that other entities always think about some of those types of things, but we really are a member-driven organization. We want to provide high-quality coverage, but there are ways that we can do that, and can do it smarter, by just being thoughtful in terms of how we seek that care. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, the next item is a complex one. So back in 2019, maybe, I showed you a template that we had put together that was a salary table for administrative director level positions. And it was a table that I had created in my previous district, because when I was there, we didn't have a table that we could consult with either. We had a wide variety of positions, and we tried to fit those positions to a single collection of options as far as, do we include this piece, do we not, what's the salary range? And so we really spent about 18 months looking at the salary levels, the salary scales for all of our administrative, all of our directive level positions. And one of the things that we found that was most startling is we had individuals with, when we looked at the table just from an annual salary perspective, it made sense. An assistant principal at the middle school made less than an elementary principal. That was very logical to us. But when we looked at the table from a per diem perspective, number of days worked, and calculated an annual a rate of pay on a daily basis, we had assistant principals at the middle school making more per day than our elementary principals were. And so that really drove us to try and think differently about how we create a table, create a process, a system to align compensation for a very dynamic group of positions. So when I first introduced this to you, we had maybe 20 columns. We now have many more than 20 columns because we never delete a column. We always maintain it because that column has a placeholder. We never know if we're going to go back to a position where we might need that column in the future, and we want to maintain the integrity of the system across the board. And so one of the questions came in regarding administrator contracts and administrator salaries for this year. And we thought it best, rather than have this just in consent, let's pull it out of consent. I could share it with you, go through some of the basic pieces of a spreadsheet. If you love spreadsheets, this is a good one. It's got a lot of calculators working behind the scenes, and it really does make sense when you look at it in a big scale. But for me to try and print this, either A, I would have to make the print really small, which would be really difficult, or you'd have to have 2 or 3 tables because the number of sheets of paper that you'd need to really look at it would be pretty vast. And so we thought we'd share it from an electronic perspective, just so you can get in and look around and maybe make some sense, or at least have some questions that you may have that we can address at our next meeting on July 23rd. So this whole body of work really starts and looks at a single number. And that single number is this base annual salary amount. That base annual salary amount, its origin, when we first did it, was step 10 in the master's degree column in our CSEA agreement. So that was our initial starting point. And the reason we started there was our thinking was an administrator would likely have 10 years of experience. They would likely have a master's degree in education or in leadership. And so we thought that would be a great place to start. From there, we started looking at the different positions that we had across the district. So a dean of students position, K-5, compared to a dean of students position at the middle school or the high school. An assistant principal at the elementary or middle school is different than an assistant principal at the high school. It's different because they have different complexities of the job. They have to work more days. There's just a unique dynamic. So that's why we have so many columns representing so many different jobs across the district. And so you'll see some variables that we look at. First and foremost, is there a Michigan Department of Ed certification required for the position? Then we factor in the number of weeks worked, the number of days worked. We know that there might be some occasions where individuals have to work beyond their contracted amount. Maybe they've got to do special work associated with a bond project or special work associated with having to move into a new building. So we wanted to have a placeholder, at least a way for us to acknowledge that we can pay people a little bit more with limitations, so that in the event that we were ever audited, an auditor could come and say, well, why did you pay Marty Sullivan 3 days beyond his contracted amount? And then we could go back and say, well, first, it's a provision in the contract. We give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room because we do know that at times there are cases where people have to work beyond the number of contracted days. And so we just tried to think in terms of providing as many windows, as many variables as possible, but still have it be systematized. That's the key. It's a system. It's not a random collection of, oh, I really like that person, so that's why. We included some of the positions have vacation days. Some of them do not have vacation days. Some of the positions are year-round positions. Some of them are 45-week positions, so those individuals would just work 225 days. So we really tried to be mindful of all of those different variables that we've encountered across the board with a variety of positions. So then we get into kind of the element of the table that makes for some fun calculations. This is where, if you really like spreadsheets, it gets exciting. But we had to figure out a way that we could make sense mathematically of a variety of different positions with a variety of different levels of responsibility. And it's not perfect. It's not a perfect scale. You can't measure the value of a middle school assistant principal compared to the value of a high school assistant principal. But we do know that if the job is a little bit more complex, that individual should make a little bit more compensation. And this table allows us to do that. So what you'll see in the multiplier section is the factor, the multiplier that if you remember, you go back to that base amount. So for example, the dean of students for the K-5 position, their multiplier for an entry-level dean of students, their multiplier is a 1. And so when we go down to their annual amount, their annual salary, it's $76,590. That's the same amount as our base multiplier, our base amount. And so then if you work your way across, if we went over to an elementary principal position, for example, their base multiplier is 1.35%. And so the way we determined their annual rate of pay is it's 1.35% times the base multiplier. So the $7,690. So the elementary principal year 1 is $103,000 $397. So then when it gets really fun, thank you very much. Do you need the shades? Okay, perfect. Where it gets really fun then, and it's that piece where we wanted to make sure that we were thoughtful, position by position, and because the different positions all work different amounts of days, then we took a look and we divided the annual rate of pay by the number of days that people worked. And so then you'll see that, you know, an elementary principal, step one, makes $481 per day. A high school assistant principal makes $463 per day. A middle school assistant or elementary assistant principal makes $448 per day. And so we tried to be thoughtful of those variables as well. So we look at annual rates of pay, we look at per diem amounts, we look at complexities of the job. It's not perfect, but if you do look at the table from left to right, and as the positions vary in responsibility and complexity and days worked, the amounts of compensation received for those given positions does make sense. It's a system. And we work and we tweak it on an annual basis. We're always looking at our numbers and we compare them to other similar positions throughout the county. So the Kent ISD, their human resources group does a great job. Their business officials group does a great job of providing districts. We share our numbers and then they share the numbers back with us so that we can make sure that our numbers are aligned with, you know, a high school principal in Cedar Springs. They should make about the same as a high school principal in a similar sized district or a similar sized building. And so, you know, we look at Kennewa, we look at Lowell, we look at Forest Hills. Even though it's a bigger district, they have smaller high schools. And so we want our numbers to be comparable with that. So it's a complex thing. I know I just gave you a link that you could look at, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to get kind of an overview. You can dig into it over the next couple of weeks and bring back any questions that you have when we meet on the 23rd, or just give me a ring and I'll answer those questions that way as well. So any questions tonight, or at least initially? Jason?
I have a question for these contracts that are next or in 2 weeks. Will we know the steps for each person?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what we're trying to do, in the past, we've not done that. In the past, I've given the board the list of positions and they've approved the employee and the position. What I'm doing is reaching out to the other districts in the Kent ISD just to see what their practices are. And then we'll align our practice with best practice from the districts. And really it's about what the board wants, you know, what the board needs to make those decisions. So that more to come.
Do we need to make a motion on whether we add the steps to these contracts so we know what we're dollar amount we're approving?
I mean, the board can, it's your meeting. Or you can just let me know this is what we need, so, and we can make it happen.
God, as somebody who loves Excel spreadsheets personally, I just want to make, and I really do, I just want to make sure, is this read only or can damage be done? Like, I don't, when we get in poke around, is there? This locks and
You're read only. You can,
Okay.
You can't copy it. You can't share it with anyone. You can't delete it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I want to be able to review it, but I want to make sure I don't accidentally.
Yeah. No, you're good.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
So one of the other issues is it is confusing, because basically they're looking for Scott. It's a formality that we approve them. And that's the other question Scott's gonna be asking the other districts is, you know, but we approve all the teachers' contracts too, but we're not looking at all of their, you know, different rates and so on. So we're gonna see what we can find out if there's any different rate presented, but basically, you know, this is Scott's work as the CEO of the company. And it works into the whole budget. Good piece that Monty just presented tonight. So getting into the day-to-day and the nuts and bolts doesn't always serve where our work needs to be. but we're definitely gonna take a look.
Well, under section 7 of the contract, it states that the board approves a certain dollar amount. So under the
Yep.
section 7 of that contract, it states the board needs to approve a certain dollar amount.
Yep.
So that would be in the workings of the board.
And that's what we're gonna look at, if that is the appropriate word. Maybe that's something that's just been used year to year, so we're gonna look at maybe that wording needs to change.
So from what I'm understanding, over the years, the board has never, ever approved a contract with a dollar amount. So you
Yeah.
guys approved a blank check. pretty much.
No, that is not true.
You knew the dollar amount going into it?
So my, what goes into your budget forecast, is you gotta review those dollar amounts, like those funds.
Yeah.
We have steps multiplied out, lump sums, we know what the dollar amount is for salaries, we know what it is for benefits. It's in the, I think, right,
Because the board,
You understand that?
we did see this.
we know.
I mean, it's kind of-
So you're approving a dollar amount that you don't see. You're approving a contract under section 7 that says that you have to approve a salary per diem. And when you approve it, you don't have that dollar amount from you.
We had the roll up and we had the breakdown. But we just
So
don't
that
have
line
by
general stuff.
Yeah, we just don't have by, like, I don't know, like, I wouldn't go in and look at every individual. and cut it.
If your constituents are okay with you approving a dollar amount that's not there.
That's,
That's
that's in your budget, you just shared those correctly, right?
That's a budget then for the entire school. It
It
doesn't break down the contract, but you're approving.
It's the
No, you said this is
salaries.
the salaries isn't that pie chart.
Yeah, it's salaries, but you're approving an individual contract for these individual people that were put out for recommendations. That contract basically states what dollar amount needs to be.
But with the spreadsheets, it actually is very easy to figure out. I mean, because if the system is there, all the steps are there, I think, so that, I mean, as a board, I think that's what's vital and important is we know there isn't a trump. There's a very systematic approach and it's being followed.
No, but this is the first time you've seen the spreadsheet, correct? When's the last time you've seen the spreadsheet?
The system, I presented in 2019, I'd have to go back and look to verify the specific date. Right.
Spreadsheet.
Right.
That's the major concern. I haven't seen the
And so
spreadsheet.
we know there's a system, and
Oh, I understand the system, I just wanna make sure there's checks and balances in the system.
Yep.
And then in the employee, recommendations where new hires, what it says exactly how much it's gonna be. It's like right there.
It showed steps in that? What step? of
No, it
exactly
doesn't
that?
show the steps. The steps are in that document. But in the workbook, employee workbook, it states how much we're approving for Dan. It states how much it is for, Mr. Ash for coming on as a basketball coach. It states it right there already in our workbook, like, right there.
Can you show me online, please?
Go right onto your agenda.
Okay.
Go right into DOE staff workbook 7C. Click on that and it'll tell you right there. Resignations, new hire, retirement, unpaid leave, and it tells right there, new hire, look at their names. Effective date, pay rate.
And what my job is just to make sure that you as a board have the information you need to make great decisions. So I can easily put together a spreadsheet and we can easily make that happen.
Yeah, and I think to Jason's point, I mean, what Heidi was touching on is, the language right now is certainly sounds like, yes, the board is very involved in that, but I think while we might look at the wording, essentially, we have access to it already if we, if we.
Yeah, I'd like to show me that, but I can find interesting here.
It's right in the agenda. Under consent items, you have 7A, 7B, 7C. 7C, like, so we approved is approval of personal recommendations. Right there,
Right, but that's-
24 DOE
That's
staff
nothing to do with
workbook.
Contracts. Under consent items.
that's correct, that's new hires.
Right, that is new hires, but not
Right.
the contracts that we're doing.
And we pulled that out of the consent items or
No, I
consent
understand, I
agenda.
just want to get clarification that we have went every single time we've renewed the contracts, we've never seen it done on the contract.
There,
So I, just as a fiscal responsibility of the community, to not see a dollar amount on the contract we're approving. I don't go buy a house without seeing a dollar amount on the contract.
It's right there. But it's right there.
Under new hires,
okay, so I think we need to move on, there's gonna be more to come, and we have a piece that will have more information coming. But what you're trying to discredit is the rest of the board, and that's not what we're here to do. So the numbers have been there, so we're gonna move forward,
they have not done,
more to come.
Perfect. The next item is AP Comparative Government and Policy Textbook Proposal. That book has been sitting on Barb's desk since our May meeting. We don't have it on for action tonight because it wouldn't meet the 30-day requirement for it to be available for people to review. So if you have any questions about the book, I'll do my best to entertain them. Otherwise, Ron will be back and we'll be able to entertain those questions at the meeting on the 23rd. The people who have looked at the book in district office have said that they would like to take the class. So it is a neat resource.
Have we had any reviewers of the book?
I've had two.
Okay.
And then I built it.
So any questions on that AP textbook? Okay, perfect. The last agenda item, the superintendent performance evaluation, is really setting the table for the work that we're going to do on the 23rd. I included two artifacts that came right off the MASB website. The first is a PDF of the 2024-2025 superintendent evaluation tool. And then there's also a live spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet that you can go in and utilize that if you prefer to do an electronic tool. The third artifact is a self-assessment that I've included. What I need to do is add supporting evidence to that document, and I'll be punching those artifacts in to our agenda for the 23rd. So you'll have a full 2 weekends to be able to review the artifacts that I've included just to help support the self-assessment that I've provided. So this is just the groundwork, just a starting point for us. And again, Mark Dobiash is going to be coming in on the 23rd and just helping to lead that work of reviewing my performance. It's, we talk about the budget being dynamic. We talk about construction being dynamic. Evaluating performance of a role is also a dynamic body of work. And so it takes some time, got to be patient, ask good questions, and take a look at the evidence that's provided. So any questions on that? Beautiful. Okay. That's all for discussion. Okay.
All right, that brings us to the public comment portion of our meeting tonight. This is the time that the school board will hear from the public, and we won't necessarily be solving any problems or responding, but we'll have our CEO, our superintendent, Mr. Smith, follow up with you. And I have one person that has registered to speak. So, Mr. Smith, if you would like to, if you'd like to come to the podium. What's up, my lovely little timer here?
Appreciate it. Okay, all right. So thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Knowing several of you, I know that you to be focused on creating a school district that is exemplary and of the highest quality for our students. I'm here tonight to appeal to that desire. As I understand, there's a small little change at Cedar Trails that has a little less access to the library at the school, and that's not really my concern. My concern more has to do with the arc of access to books in the school district as a whole. While I think visiting the library is important, no matter what the future of the library trails is, that concern of less books in the schools is just what I'm addressing. Classroom time, teaching students how to read is already decreasingly focused on books.
Students learn to read by reading excerpts of books and other publications that allow them to do the work to perform on tests, which is important. However, these exercises lack the experience of reading a piece of work in its entirety so that the reader experiences the fullness of understanding that comes from reading a whole book. On top of that, most of our libraries don't have libraries, and most of our schools don't have libraries in them currently. There's not trained librarians to help students, not just to learn to read, but to become lifelong learners. This happens when professionals get to know readers, what will speak to them. I fell in love with books as a young person in school. And one of those people who was foundational to that was my fourth grade teacher, Miss Ott. And so as a kid that struggled with dyslexia, Miss Ott and the school librarian worked hard every week to bring me books that I was excited to try. And that foundational experience led me to work for the last 30 years connecting people to books in an independent bookstore. And I will always owe a lot to Miss Ott and the school library. My humble request of you and encouragement to you as a group is to find ways to work libraries back into our schools in some meaningful way. I'm sure it is super complicated, but you're smart, resourceful people, as we've seen tonight. Other communities close to us have robust libraries and paid librarians. I believe that we could creatively use resources to provide these same things. It's important and would be valued by the community. Lastly, I'm not just here to raise concerns and walk away. I'm here to offer help if you would like it. And if so, my email address is tim.loves.books.352@gmail.com, which is also on the form. I know that's long, but when you have a name like Tim Smith, you have to be creative. So thanks again for your time and for listening. I appreciate it, and you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Do you have any other sheets of anybody else willing to speak? With that, we'll close public comment and move to our action items for this evening. And first up for action, we have L4029 property tax. And I would entertain a motion for as presented.
Support.
Any discussion?
I had one clarification
Yes.
question. I thought just the language proposed is the same as last year, correct?
Yes, it's the same tax, same valuation, and the ability to collect taxes. I said that right?
Levy taxes.
Levy taxes.
But the change is 17.4041 to 17.3275.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the, we roll back by that 0.99. Big,
Thank you.
So I'm technically right that was written that in one resolution, so I call it as presented, we're good.
Yes, there's no formal resolution, it's the as presented, the two L429 are included in board order.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'll call vote. Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Lund,
Yes.
Trustee Patton,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes, motion carried. The next action item is the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution 2025 for 2026. And I will entertain a motion for as presented. They give us a brief into a resolution. And that's what was before us in board. So on that as presented, I will entertain a motion.
Support.
Only the second. Having none, Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Lund,
Yes.
Trustee Patton,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes, motion carries. That brings us to communication for the Board of Education. We don't have any outstanding communications from the public that we haven't already been shared with you. And then upcoming, we will be having superintendent Smith. I just want to remind everybody that will be in closed session, so the people of the document we have in front of us, with that confidentiality. We're best to give that information because we didn't want to take closed session to wherever, and to give consideration. Yeah.
Nothing new from my table.
Okay, so. Now, we have our next meeting on June 23rd. That graduation behind us, we don't worry about that. We have any social engagement. So having said all that, we will have no more business before us, we'll see you adjourned at 8:20. Thank you.